Today's recap is It, Chapter 1, October 1988. We're introduced to Bill, who is making a paper boat for his little brother Georgie. Having finished the boat, Bill hands it over to Georgie. The two share a hug, and the little guy heads downstairs to play while Bill, who is unwell, stays inside. Georgie runs out of the house and into the rain, waving to his brother, who is watching from the upstairs window. Bill uses a radio to remind Georgie to be careful. Georgie eagerly tests out his new boat, chasing it as it floats along a stream of water. However, he manages to discombobulate himself by running into a construction barrier, allowing the boat to get away from him. Once he recovers, he chases after the boat, but is unable to stop it from falling into a storm drain. As Georgie searches the drain, a pair of eyes reveal themselves from the darkness, frightening the young boy. The owner of said eyes lets out a cheerful, "Hiya, Georgie," as the figure steps forward, revealing a clown with a rather unsettling appearance. Georgie remains wary and fearful. The clown, holding up Georgie's paper boat, compliments it and asks if the boy wants it back. Georgie responds with a nervous but polite, "Yes, please." The clown then changes the subject, asking if Georgie has any friends. Georgie cautiously entertains the question, admitting that Bill is his bestest friend, but is at home, sick. Drool runs down the clown's face as he offers to cheer Bill up with the help of a balloon, and even offers Georgie one. The boy appears conflicted and uncomfortable, ultimately admitting that he isn't supposed to take things from strangers. The clown then introduces himself as Pennywise, the dancing clown, which seems to put Georgie at ease. The boy asks what Pennywise is doing in the sewer, and the clown smoothly responds that the storm blew them away, along with the entire circus. Pennywise then asks if Georgie can smell the circus, and begins listing foods, prompting Georgie to excitedly chime in with popcorn, remarking that it's his favorite. Pennywise claims mine too, and starts making popping noises in a playful, silly manner. Georgie finds this amusing and begins to laugh, but the clown suddenly falls silent and still, putting Georgie on edge. The boy nervously says he needs to get going, but Pennywise reminds him of the boat, goading him into reaching for it. Georgie takes the bait and reaches into the storm drain, where Pennywise grabs his arm and has a cheeky nibble, savagely tearing it off when the boy pulls away. As Georgie tries crawling to safety, Pennywise drags him back into the drain as the boy lets out one final call for Billy, while a nearby cat does nothing but watch. 8 months later, in June of 1989, we meet Mike, who is visibly reluctant to fire a bolt gun into a sheep's head, which is completely understandable. His grandfather, frustrated with Mike's hesitation, takes the weapon and pops the sheep himself. He then scolds Mike, comparing him to who his father was at the same age. Mike, clearly hurt by the comment, snaps back, "I'm not my dad, okay?" His grandfather pauses but then gives him some harsh advice. We then cut to the hallway of a school, where Billy and his friends are chatting about random topics, including an upcoming bar mitzvah for their Jewish friend Stanley. We'll get to know everyone shortly. As they walk, we catch a glimpse of some local bullies. Richie, who seems to have some familiarity with them, even mentions a recent prank they pulled on him. We meet Beverly, or Bev for short, who is currently being confronted by a girl named Greta. Greta accuses Bev of being both a little shit and a slut, allegedly. Confused, Bev asks which one it is, and Greta clarifies, "You're trash," before dumping a bag of garbage all over Bev. Seriously, what's going on in girls' bathrooms? Meanwhile, back with the boys, we catch a hilarious and slightly inappropriate comment about tickling pickles and are introduced to Eddie, a hypochondriac, Richie, the group's self-proclaimed comedian, and Stanley, a milquetoast. The group's antics come to a halt when Eddie notices the mother of Betty Ripsum, a local child who has recently gone missing. Richie, ever the comedian, makes some distasteful jokes about Betty Ripsum, suggesting that she's probably already dead and painting a vivid and grim picture of how he imagines she'll be found. Bill, clearly affected by this, snaps at Richie, correcting him by saying that she's only missing. Richie realizes he's crossed a line and apologizes. The group then gets hassled by some local bullies. Bill decides to stand up to them with quite the zinger, mustering a defiant, albeit stuttered, "You suck, Bowers." Henry Bowers, the ringleader, isn't amused. He warns Bill that he got off easy this year because of his little brother's tragedy, but promises that summer will be a hurt train for him and his friends. The bullies eventually leave. Next, we meet Ben, He and Bev cross paths for the first time, and she kindly warns him that Henry and his gang are hanging around the west entrance. She mentions that everyone knows the bullies are looking for him. Bev then notices Ben's headphones and, curious about his music taste, playfully takes them to find out he's a fan of New Kids on the Block. Ben downplays his interest in New Kids on the Block, but Bev doesn't seem to mind. The two introduce themselves, and Bev offers to sign his yearbook, a gesture that stands out as she notices no one else has bothered to do so. Meanwhile, Bill arrives home, where he's immediately confronted by his frustrated father. His dad is angry about the detailed sewer model Bill has built in hopes of figuring out where Georgie might have ended up. Bill tries to explain, clinging to the hope that his little brother might still be found, but his father refuses to listen. He forcefully insists that Georgie is gone, shouting, "Georgie is dead!" and demands Bill dismantle the model before his mother sees it. We then cut to Mike, who spots Henry Bowers and his gang in town. Realizing the danger, Mike quickly seeks refuge in a nearby alleyway, hoping to stay out of sight. After they drive past, Mike continues on, but soon hears the ominous rattling of a chain behind him. A door violently jolts open, left partially ajar by a chain. To Mike's horror, charred hands begin reaching out, accompanied by faint cries for help. A fiery glow illuminates the scene as smoke pours out from the door. Suddenly, the hands retreat and the fire and smoke vanish. The door bursts open, and Mike hears the sound of sheep bleating before spotting Pennywise behind a clear PVC curtain. Before he can process what he's seeing, Mike's attention shifts to Henry and his gang, who are speeding straight toward him in their car. Mike dives to the ground just in time to avoid being hit. Henry shouts a menacing warning, demanding that Mike stay the EF out of his town. Meanwhile, Stan is rehearsing for his bar mitzvah. We learn that his father is the rabbi, who expresses disappointment in Stan's trouble with pronunciation, suggesting he practice in his office instead. As Stan heads into the office, he purposefully avoids looking at a disturbing portrait of your mother, but then makes the effort to straighten it. Suddenly, he's startled by the sound of something falling. He turns around to find the painting now lying on the floor. As Stan walks toward the painting, the lights behind him flicker out. He carefully returns the frame to the wall, but to his horror, the woman in the painting has vanished. The creaking of a door fills the room, and Stan nervously scans his surroundings. When he hears a clanging noise and turns around, he's met with the grotesque figure from the painting, which gives a hauntingly unsettling, yet cheeky smile. Terrified, Stan screams and bolts out of the office. Meanwhile, Bill, Eddie, and Richie are getting ready, making plans to search for Georgie. As they prepare to leave, Eddie's mother questions them about where they're headed. Despite being terrible liars, she believes their excuse and warns Eddie not to roll around in the grass due to his allergies. Just as they're about to go, she insists Eddie say goodbye. We then see all four boys riding their bikes through town. At the local library, Ben is writing a love confession to Bev when he notices the boys riding by outside. The librarian interrupts him by dropping a book in front of him and announcing, "Found it." As Ben flips through the book detailing the grim history of Derry, he discovers a pattern of death and tragedy, and that a recently found body was not Betty Ripsom's, suggesting a significant missing persons issue. Suddenly, he hears the faint laughter of children and turns around to see a red balloon eerily floating away, moving in a perfectly still and uncanny manner. Getting up to follow the balloon, Ben comes across a trail of steaming Easter eggs, a strange coincidence, considering the 1908 article he was just reading. He follows the eggs, which lead him down to the lower floors of the library. As he inspects one of the eggs, the lights start to flicker, and a headless man carrying a whole lot of eggs begins to descend the stairs. The headless man drops all of them, and now upset, starts chasing Ben. Just then, Ben hears someone call him Egg Boy, and he turns to see Pennywise. Ben, terrified, crashing straight into the librarian from earlier, who questions what he's doing down there. Ben looks around but finds Pennywise has vanished. He quickly dashes out of the library. As Ben leaves, Henry and his gang confront him. They drag Ben away and start doing some seriously deranged things that go well beyond typical bullying. An elderly couple watches Ben struggle from a distance as he calls them for help. They make no move to intervene, but a red balloon can be seen ominously rising from the back of their car. Henry throws a few cheeky punches at Ben's head before pulling out a knife, escalating things even further. One of Henry's goons thinks they're going too far, but Henry tells him to shut up, vowing to carve his entire name into Ben, referring to the boy as Cottage Cheese. Not appreciating the name calling, Ben kicks Henry in the manhood and backflips over a fence, tumbling down a steep hill. Henry threatens to cut off Ben's tits before chasing after him. Meanwhile, Ben is literally rolling down the hill. When Henry reaches the bottom, he starts to panic, having lost his father's knife on the way down, and mutters, "My dad's going to kill me!" Desperate, he orders two of his goons to keep pursuing Ben. Meanwhile, Bill and his friends investigate a sewer entrance. Eddie and Richie argue about gray water and the potential for staph infections. Their bickering is cut short when Bill discovers a shoe belonging to Betty Ripsum. Eddie is eager to leave, but Bill makes a heartfelt case. If he were in Betty's position, he'd want someone to look for him, and the same goes for Georgie. Stanley sides with Eddie, insisting that it's summer and he just wants to have fun. Their discussion is interrupted by the arrival of a bloodied and injured Ben, with Richie wanting to know what happened to him. Later, one of Henry's goons, Patrick, stumbles upon the same sewer entrance. As he ventures into the tunnels, his makeshift flamethrower illuminates the eerie space, revealing a group of terrifying zombie-like corpses that send him into a panic. Patrick tries to escape but finds himself at a dead end. He turns around just in time to see a red balloon floating toward him. The balloon pops, and Patrick comes face to face with Pennywise, who swiftly attacks him. The boys, now in town, arrive in an alleyway where Bill instructs Richie to stay with Ben, while the others run to a pharmacy to get medical supplies. At the pharmacy, Bev is also there buying tampons, in an attempt to avoid a run-in with Greta. She instead encounters the boys, who explain that they ran into a kid who looks like someone tried to kill him, but they don't have enough money for the supplies. We then cut to an uncomfortable scene where Bev flirts with the creepy pharmacist to create a distraction, allowing the boys to leave the store without paying. Bev catches up with the group in the alleyway and shows concern over Ben's injury. Before leaving, Bill invites her to join them at the quarry the next day. She thanks him for the invitation before heading off. Bev arrives back home and crosses paths with her father, who questions what's in the shopping bag. Upon seeing the tampons, he disturbingly sniffs. Yes, sniffs the top of her head, caresses her hair, and asks if she's still Daddy's little girl, confirming that he's a massive creep. Yuck. Bev responds meekly with a yes, and the sicko allows her to pass. We then see her in the bathroom, crying as she cuts her hair much shorter. Later on, we see the group of boys in their tighty whities, with Eddie and Richie arguing over a spitting competition. They all seem nervous about jumping into the water below until Bev shouts, "I'll go!" The boys turn around as she calls them sissies and takes a running leap into the water. Richie exclaims, "What the fuck?" as she falls, and Bill quickly follows her. The kids enjoy themselves. It's shown Bill appears interested in Bev. He still seems somewhat immature and scared of girls, with Ben showing far more confidence. Richie starts rummaging through Ben's bag and questions him about all the history books. As Ben explains, Bill tries to compliment Bev's new hairstyle, but his stutter gets in the way, allowing Ben to swoop in and deliver the compliment instead. "Look at that cheeky glance. Get emasculated, idiot." Ben explains that the rate of people dying or disappearing in Derry is 6 times the national average. He adds that those numbers are only for adults, and it's way, way worse for children. He then offers to show the group his research back at his house. In Ben's room, his walls are covered with clippings and notes. He mentions that one winter, 91 people disappeared without a trace, as if they all just vanished, with the only clue being a trail of bloody clothes leading to the wellhouse. Bill asks where the wellhouse is now, but Ben admits he doesn't know. Sometime later, Eddie is walking home alone when he comes across a creepy, run-down property. The door to the house creaks open, and a raspy voice asks, "What are you looking for?" Eddie tries to run away, but drops his pills and stops to pick them up. As he's collecting them, a mysterious hand appears, and the voice asks, "Do you think this will help me, Eddie?" The figure is shown to be a grotesque leper. Terrified, Eddie runs, crying for help, with the leper chasing after him. As he turns around, he sees Pennywise standing there, holding a bunch of red balloons. The dancing clown invites him to float, but Eddie screams in terror and scrambles through a hole in the fence behind him. He hears the sound of balloons popping and turns around to find Pennywise has vanished. Back at home, Bev finds the love note written by Ben and seems enchanted by it, although she doesn't know who the note is from, as it's been signed by a secret admirer. Suddenly, she hears whispers coming from her bathroom sink. As she cautiously moves closer to investigate, the voices speak of floating down there. Curiously, Bev begins feeding a measuring tape down the drain and eventually hits something. When she pulls the tape back up, it's covered in blood and hair. The hair comes to life, wrapping around her and pulling her toward the sink as she cries out for her dad. Blood starts seeping from the sink, then erupts all over the place, covering the floor, walls, and even the ceiling. The hair retreats, leaving Bev screaming in horror. Her father rushes in to see what's happening, but when she frantically explains, he seems oblivious and asks, "What blood?" Instead, he focuses on her haircut, commenting that it makes her look like a boy, finding this to be a mic drop moment. He exits the room, leaving Bev shocked and alone. Meanwhile, Bill is woken up by a leak in the ceiling. He grabs a bucket, and as he returns to his room, the light in Georgie's bedroom mysteriously turns on. Bill goes to investigate and finds a Lego turtle, which brings him to tears as he remembers Georgie. Suddenly, he hears the sound of wet footsteps echoing through the house. Heading downstairs, Bill sees what looks like an apparition of Georgie in his yellow rain jacket, and he drops the turtle in shock. He follows the apparition into the flooded basement, where Georgie says, "I lost it, Billy. Don't be mad." Bill reassures his brother that he isn't mad, but Georgie continues, "It just floated off." "But Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too," repeating, "You'll float too," with growing anger. As Georgie's voice becomes more furious, Pennywise reveals himself, using Georgie like a puppet. The boy's appearance deteriorates, becoming more rotten with each repetition of, "You'll float too." Terrified, Bill bolts out of the basement. The following morning, Bev rushes to meet the boys as they arrive, announcing that she has to show them something. She leads them to the bloody bathroom, and unlike her father, they all see the blood. Bill remarks that they can't just leave it like that, and a cleaning montage ensues. Ben takes a moment to check out Bev's bedroom and notices the love letter he wrote. However, he catches sight of Bev and Bill flirting in the bathroom, leaving him disheartened as he steps outside to take out a trash bag. Bev senses his mood and clarifies with Bill that she isn't a bad person, a slut, or trash. She explains that she's only ever kissed one guy and references the love letter poem. Bill, who doesn't realize the significance of the poem, admits he doesn't know much about poetry. He reassures her by saying he never believed the rumors about her, and neither did any of the other losers. The group officially refer to themselves as the Losers Club, despite this not being established. Later on, Bill reveals to the rest of the group that he saw Georgie, but it was as if, before he can finish, Eddie completes Bill's sentence by saying, "a clown," admitting that he saw something too. Side note, Eddie totally resembles Goob from Meet the Robinsons. Ben doesn't say anything, but he nods, and Stanley, hesitant to speak up, conveys everything with a single uneasy glance. Richie then chimes in with, "Can only virgins see this stuff?" Their attention shifts as they notice Henry's car nearby, and Eddie suggests they should get out of there. However, they also spot Mike's bike, and Bev insists that they should help him. With that, the group rushes off to do just that. We see Mike's face being shoved into some meat, and in the distance, he spots Pennywise waving at him with a dismembered arm, which is weirdly adorable. Henry pins Mike to the ground and is about to go full psycho mode when, out of nowhere, he takes a rog to the nog. The rest of the losers, led by Bev, arm themselves with rocks as Mike rushes to join them. Henry makes a crude remark about Bev, prompting Ben to go caveman mode before hurling another rock at Henry's head. Richie then dramatically declares, "Rock war!" just as he gets hit in the face. Chaos ensues as rocks fly back and forth. But the losers emerge victorious, forcing Henry's gang to retreat, leaving him behind. Richie, celebrating their win, shouts, "Go blow your dad, you mullet-wearing asshole," while flipping Henry not one but two birds. Mike expresses his gratitude, but says they shouldn't have intervened. The losers reassure him that it's fine, pointing out that Henry's always after them anyway, and they officially welcome Mike to the Losers Club. Later, back in town, they discuss the missing persons cases. Ben explains that he believes it will eventually end, as his research shows there's a 27-year gap between major spikes and disappearances. As they speculate about what it could be, Stanley argues that it can't be the same thing, since they each saw something different. Mike suggests that maybe it knows what scares them the most and appears to them in that form. Stanley remains skeptical, comparing their experiences to bad dreams, but Mike disagrees emphatically, stating he knows the difference between reality and dreams. He then shares the traumatic story of the house fire that killed his parents, emphasizing that everyone is afraid of something. Richie reluctantly admits his fear: clowns. Later, the losers overlay a map of Derry's sewer lines with the help of a projector. They discover that all the strange events seem connected to the sewers, with every line leading back to the wellhouse. Eddie tells the group that's where he saw the clown, and then launches into a rant about how this should be their summer of fun, tearing the map off the wall in frustration. Suddenly, the projector starts changing slides on its own, catching everyone off guard. It flips through family photos before focusing on a red-headed woman. The projector speeds up, rapidly cycling through images of the same person until it reveals Pennywise. Panic sets in and Richie shouts, "What the fuck is that?" Bev yells for someone to turn the projector off, and Mike kicks it to the ground, but it remains on. Pennywise reveals itself again as the lights flicker on and off. The clown vanishes from the slides, only to appear in the garage, terrifying everyone. Ben and Mike manage to lift the garage door, flooding the room with daylight, causing Pennywise to disappear. Eddie freaks out, panicking about the fact that Pennywise saw them and now knows where they are. Bill tries to calm him down, saying that Pennywise always knew. Bill then attempts to rally the group, but they're all terrified. Richie repeats his "It's summer" line, which pushes Bill to his breaking point, and he takes off on his bike alone. He arrives at the creepy, rundown property, the location of the wellhouse. As he approaches to go inside, the rest of the Losers Club catches up, with Bev trying to reason with him, saying that going in there is crazy. Bill responds that they don't have to go in with him, but he asks what will happen when another Georgie, Betty, or one of them goes missing. He shares how hard it is for him to go home, seeing Georgie's belongings and constantly being reminded of his brother. He admits it's easier for him to enter this terrifying house than to go back to his own home. Richie is taken aback, letting out a somber "wow" before noting that Bill didn't stutter once. This moment seems to earn the group's confidence in Bill, and they all walk toward the house. Everyone except Stanley, who suggests someone should stay and keep watch. Bill asks who wants to stay, and everyone but Bev raises their hand. Shortly after, Bill, Eddie, and Richie enter the house. Richie stumbles upon a missing persons poster of himself, triggering a minor freakout. Bill has to calm him down, reminding him that it isn't real and that it's playing tricks. Suddenly, a noise from upstairs grabs the boys' attention, and they begin heading up to investigate. They come across a panicked Betty, but before she has a chance to speak, she is swiftly pulled away. Despite this, Bill and Richie continue toward the room where Betty vanished, while Eddie is distracted by a voice asking, "What are you looking for?" Eddie calls out to see if the others heard it, but Bill and Richie are already moving toward the room. Once inside, they don't find Betty anywhere, and the door slams shut and locks behind them, leaving Eddie alone in the hallway. As Eddie runs toward the locked bedroom, the hallway begins to crumble around him. A grotesque arm reaches out, and a voice insists it's time for Eddie to take his pill. The leper from earlier appears, offering a pill perched on its tongue. The horrifying sight causes Eddie to faint, and he falls through a hole in the floor, landing hard on a table below. Meanwhile, as Bill struggles with the door, someone calls Richie's name. It appears to be Eddie, beckoning Richie into another room. Richie follows and scolds him, calling him a dipshit for playing hide-and-seek. The group becomes even more separated when the door to the room Richie entered slams shut. As the lights flicker, Richie realizes he's trapped in a room full of clowns. Suddenly, a coffin in the room opens, and inside, he finds a decaying replica of himself. Terrified, he slams the coffin shut, only for Pennywise to emerge with a taunting "beep, beep" as it quickly advances toward him. Bill manages to open the door and pull Richie to safety, quickly closing the door to the clown room behind them. As they try to regroup, a nearby mattress begins to cackle, and an Eddie-shaped head pops up, laughing and shaking maniacally while oozing acidic black goo from its mouth. We then see the real Eddie wake up from his earlier encounter with the table, and it's clear his arm is now broken. Suddenly, an arm appears near a fridge, and Pennywise makes a chilling entrance, taunting Eddie and telling him, "It's time to float." Meanwhile, Bill and Richie stumble upon 3 labeled doors. Opting for the not scary at all option, they find a dark room with a voice eerily asking, "Where's my shoe?" A light switches on, revealing Betty hanging in the air with her legs missing. Both boys are terrified, but Bill manages to calm Richie, reminding him that none of this is real. At the same time, Pennywise looms over Eddie, salivating and relishing the fear emanating from the boy, calling it delicious. As he prepares to feast, Bill and Richie finally escape the room they were trapped in and burst into the kitchen. They come face to face with Pennywise, who confronts Bill, mocking him by asking if he's not real enough for him and adding that he was certainly real enough for Georgie. As the dancing clown charges toward the boys, Bev heroically rushes in with a fire poker, stabbing Pennywise and causing the creature to cry in pain. She then hurries to help Eddie, but Pennywise turns back to them with a new and improved, deformed face. Creeping closer as one of its hands morphs into a sharp claw. It swipes at Ben before retreating. Determined not to let it escape, Bill chases after Pennywise, watching as the creature descends into a well. Meanwhile, Richie manages to snap Eddie's broken arm back into place, and the losers make their escape from the house. Later, Eddie's furious mother arrives and scolds them, calling Bev a dirty girl. Bill tells the group that he saw the well and vows that next time they'll be ready to confront Pennywise. Stanley, however, questions what he means by next time and accuses Bill of being insane. Bev argues that no one else in town is going to do anything about the situation, while Richie points out that Eddie nearly died and that Ben is bleeding hamburger helper. Ben doesn't care if it comes back every 27 years. By that time, he'll be 40 and has no intention of staying in this town. Bill and Richie get into a cheeky fist fight after Richie tells Bill that his brother is dead and that going down this path will only get them all killed. Bev attempts to de-escalate the situation by reminding them that Pennywise wants to divide them. She emphasizes that they were all together when they heard it, which is why they are still alive. Richie agrees and adds that he plans on keeping it that way before leaving, giving Bill a friendly shoulder tap on his way out as the rest of the group goes their separate ways. August 1989. We see Henry doing some target practice on a cat. However, he's interrupted by his father, who embarrasses him in front of his goons by making him shake in fear. Meanwhile, Eddie goes to pick up his medications from the pharmacy, where Greta informs him that the medications he's taking are placebos. Not understanding what this means, Eddie asks for clarification, and Greta explains that it means they're useless and essentially bullshit. She then offers to sign his cast. Later that day, we see Henry captivated by a red balloon that leads him to a mailbox, where he finds a package containing the knife he lost earlier. Inside, a woman and children on the TV tell Henry to kill his father, and he does. Meanwhile, Bev trying to leave her home with a packed bag, only to notice the door padlocked, her father then asking, "Where are you sneaking off to?" He then confronts her about the rumors he's heard about her, and whether or not she's doing womanly things with the losers. She insists they're only friends, and her father then asks about the love letter before asking if she's still his little girl. As he holds onto her very firmly, Bev lets out a defiant "no" before breaking free and locking herself in the bathroom. Her father breaks in and she ends up knocking him out with the lid of a cistern, leaving the man with a nasty injury. As Bev turns to leave, Pennywise grabs her. Bill arrives to her place, where he finds her father before seeing "You will die if you try" written on the walls of her bedroom. Bill rushes to inform Richie that it has taken Beverly, and Richie understands the gravity of the situation. We then see Eddie receive a call, and he agrees to meet. As he tries to leave, his mother confronts him and tells him he can't go because of his sickness. Eddie wants to know what sickness he has, pulling out a bottle of pills to exclaim, "These are gazebos! They're bullshit!" before running out of the house, telling his mother he needs to save his friends. We then see the Losers Club arrive at the decrepit house that contains the well. As Mike loads a bolt gun, Henry can be seen parked across the street. All but Stanley enter the home, but Bill convinces him that they all need to do this, and he enters. They go down into the basement to inspect the well and begin descending one by one. Meanwhile, Bev awakens to find a pile of corpses with a great number of bodies floating. Pennywise grabs her, but Bev admits she isn't afraid of it, which appears to have an effect on the dancing clown. Before telling her, "You will be," it opens its mouth to reveal a series of lights that put Bev into a comatose state as she begins to float. Before Mike can descend into the well, he is jumped by Henry, who then pulls the rope up, preventing the rest of the kids from getting back up. Mike manages to tackle Henry, who falls into the unknown depths of the well. In the scuffle, Mike foolishly loses the CO2 canisters for the bolt gun. Stanley becomes separated from the rest of the group and comes face to face with the living portrait he encountered much earlier. The losers come to his rescue, only to find him making out with it. You should probably see a doctor about that lady. As the group tries to comfort Stanley, Bill spots Georgie, who quickly runs away. Bill follows, picking up the bolt gun as he does so. Eddie notices this, and he and the rest of the group try to keep up. Bill finds Bev floating, but he is distracted by Georgie. The rest of the losers find Bev and the other floaters. The group pulls Bev down, and Ben tries to wake her, deciding the best way to do this is with a kiss, and it works. Bev references the poem he wrote, confirming it to be his. The group shares a hug, with Eddie's focus shifting towards Bill. An armless Georgie asks his older brother what took him so long, and Bill tells him he didn't stop looking. Georgie asks Billy to take him home, and his brother expresses that he would do anything for that to happen. Georgie tells Bill that he loves him, a feeling that Bill shares. However, before raising the bolt gun, he remarks, "But you're not Georgie," and shoots the child with a quick one to the head. Georgie falls to the floor, and the losers watch in shock. The body begins to shake and transform into Pennywise. As the clown rises to its feet, the group starts shouting for Bill to kill it, but Mike knows there's no bolt loaded. Bill fires a blank, and Pennywise has a bit of fun before prompting an epic rebar battle. Pennywise grabs hold of Bill, and Bev asks the clown to let him go. The clown simply replies no, before expressing its intent to grab all of them, feasting on their flesh as it feeds on their fear. It offers them a choice. They can let it have Bill, only him, before it goes on its long rest. Bill tells them to leave, blaming himself for getting them into this situation. The group reject the offer, with Richie declaring that after everything he's been through, he's gonna have to kill this clown. The entire Losers Club then contribute to kicking the dancing clown's ass, with Pennywise unable to hold a form that resembles a single fear. The clown retreats, and Bill realizes that's why it didn't kill Beverly. She wasn't afraid. Now, it's afraid. Pennywise continues to retreat and begins to disintegrate before falling into the abyss of a deep, dark hole. The floaters begin to descend, and Bill finds Georgie's raincoat. The losers comfort him with a giant group hug. September 1989. Bev recounts what she remembers in her comatose state, sharing a dream of them being together but older. She doesn't know why they were together, but remembers how they all felt. Bill suggests a blood pact vow that, should it ever come back, they'll return as well. The group holds hands and Stanley declares, "I hate you," before letting out a smirk, which makes the group laugh. They slowly begin to go their separate ways until only Bill and Bev are left. Bev reveals she will be leaving town and admits that she never felt like a loser when she was with the group, leaving with a simple bye. Mr. Steel Yo-Girl runs after Bev and kisses her. She kisses him back. Bill watches her leave, providing an ever so slight smirk as he does so. And that's it. Chapter 1. Thank you so much for watching. Consider leaving a like if you enjoyed this recap, as it really helps me out. And consider subscribing for more recaps in the future. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.